Hey, my name's James Nicholson. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I've got some big updates on the Renters' Rights Bill. I know what's the next step. I also have got an update on the pet saga that we've been talking about various times on the channel over the last few months. And a big update on the student accommodation stuff. You're not going to want to miss this one. And if you're new around here, before we jump into this, do make sure you subscribe to the channel over there and hit that bell notification. We are one of the biggest property YouTube channels in the UK. We bring you all the latest house price news, interest rate news, renters' rights bill updates, and property investing strategies, and much, much more. And let's get some views on this video, because I think people need to know what's going on with this bill. Your part's simple on this. Smash like, tickle like, do something to that like button. That really helps with the YouTube algorithm, and that really has helped the channel grow. So thanks to everyone that takes a moment to do that. So, the Renters' Rights Bill, controversial, landlords hate it, tenants often aren't aware of it actually. A recent survey came out and said 68% of tenants had no idea what the Renters' Rights Bill is. But those that do know, they do think that this is better for them. However, the repercussions of the Renters' Rights Bill, even just being floated, even when the Conservatives were doing it, is that lots of landlords have left the market. A big concern for them is the Section 21 stuff, the no-fault evictions. That is a big concern, that they won't be able to get their properties back in a timely manner if someone doesn't pay the rent or damages the property. Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you, look, Section 21, that looks like it's going through. There's no amendments on that. But there are some things that have had amendments that I will talk about. So who was in Parliament discussing this? Well, it was the Housing Minister, Matthew Pennycook. And he basically kicked out most of the amendments. So the government kicked out nearly all amendments that were presented, which is a little frustrating because some of them were quite smart and some of them were things that the government themselves were talking about. So they said in a statement, Matthew said in a statement, that if we allow any of these amendments, he specifically said landlords would abuse the system. They said the Renters' Rights Bill that is there to protect tenants, to make things better for tenants. And in his opinion, this would allow landlords to abuse the system by adding loopholes into it. So what was thrown out? Well, the pet stuff, let's talk about that. There were two amendments tabled for pets. One was that landlords would be able to get insurance and require, if the tenant had a pet, that they would get insurance to cover that pet should that pet cause any damage to the property. Now, the other one was that they would allow landlords to have a bigger deposit. Now, that actually was brought up by Labour themselves. They said that that's one thing that they were looking at. Both of those got struck out as amendments and they are not happening. So you will have to consider pets. However, I believe that if a tenant has a pet, this is actually worse for them, because landlords would consider, I think more landlords would consider pets if they had insurance or if they could charge a bigger deposit. So this will shrink the amount of landlords. Now, all landlords must consider. That's the wording that we've got here. So they've got to consider having pets, but they don't have to say yes. There's nothing in the Renters' Rights Bill that says landlords have to take pets. They've got to consider them. And so what it means is that when you see, I don't really see this on Rightmove, but I do see it on things like Gumtree more often, where you see adverts for property where it says no pets, no DSS, no children, that sort of stuff. You're not going to be able to do that going forward. But when you get the applications in and you ask them if they have a pet and they say yes, if you don't want them, you don't have to. So I don't think this is really helping the tenants, and I don't think they've really thought that through, but it is what it is. Next, this is interesting, and this one's important. The sale of a property. So what happens sometimes is that, or I can envision is likely to happen, is that a landlord wants to get their property back quickly because they're going to say that they want to sell the property. So they're going to say to a tenant that's causing antisocial behaviour, in arrears or they just want to get rid of that tenant, they're going to say, you know what, I'm selling the property, I need you to leave. So they give them 2 months notice. Now, that's kind of like a loophole that some people will try to go through. Here's the problem. What they were proposing was that the landlord, if the tenant leaves, wouldn't be able to relist that property to rent for a period of 6 months. That's what they were looking at. And the argument here was that, look, if the landlord tries to sell the property, they put it up in a market like you've got today. So you've got properties listed right now that just aren't selling at the moment. Then why wouldn't we want that back as a rental property if the landlord decides not to continue with that sale? And that was the argument here. The Labour government disagree with this, and they are pushing through or striking out all amendments on that. And they're saying that if you go to sell your property and that's your reason for evicting the tenant, you then cannot rent it for 12 months. 12 months. And that is a big problem, because there are going to be people that want to sell the property. Lots of you watching this, loads of you watching this, thousands and thousands of people watch this, say, I'm selling up, right? And so you're going through the process of Section 21ing your tenants right now. The tenants are leaving, and then you put it on the market and you suddenly find out, oh, didn't quite sell, it didn't work out as I was hoping. You now can't relist that property for rent if you change your mind for 12 months. I don't think that's particularly smart, but it is what it is. Let's talk about councils. And so there was an amendment proposed, and I think this is a fair amendment, that if a landlord has problems with the property, that it should go to a criminal standard, beyond reasonable doubt. That amendment got thrown out, and they're sticking with the civil level. So they're saying the burden is that the council just got to take you to court and get you found guilty to a civil level, which the bar is much lower. It's a lot easier to convict someone of a civil offence than a criminal offence. And so that means that it's going to be easier for councils to fine landlords. I think it should be criminal level. You should be able to defend your property, and it should be on a reasonable doubt. That's what I think. Student accommodation, that was a fairly positive thing of all the things that happened there. So student accommodation, they've had various amendments already. And so there's something called Ground 4A. They're saying that student accommodation will be able to do the tenancy as normal with the academic year. They need that, because if they don't allow that, then you won't have much student accommodation, and that would really, really make it very difficult in a lot of university towns. And this will count for all types of student accommodation, HMOs, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. So before it was just for HMOs. What they brought in this week is it will count for any student accommodation. A 1 bed or 2 bed will be included as well. I think that's smart, and that gives certainty to all of you guys that are watching that run student accommodation. So that's very, very positive. That's probably the only positive thing that I've seen out of all of this stuff over the last few days. So the next step is royal assent. Now, there could be a few back and forths with amendments, but it's not looking so likely. It's looking like it will go to royal assent now, which means it will get signed off by Charlie Boy, and then they will start working through and making parts of it active. I did a video earlier this week where I don't think that all of this will become active quickly, and I think you should have a view of that and see what you think. I think, for example, Section 21, I think that's going to be years down the line. I could be wrong. I just think that the courts can't cope. I think they know that, so I think they'll phase that sort of stuff in. Let me know what you think about the Renters' Rights Bill so far. Any of that good, positive? What do you think? Are you happy with it? Indifferent? Is it going to make you leave the market? I'd like to know in the comments below. And last thing, a few days left where we have the fundamentals of property investing at the reduced price at the moment. And this is a great time to become a property investor, because when others are fearful, that's when you should be greedy, according to Warren Buffett. And right now, you can get some cracking deals at the moment. You're going to get landlords that are selling properties, and now they know that, if I don't get this sold, I can't re-let it. I'm kind of in a difficult situation there. So you could get some really cracking deals. In the fundamentals of property investing, which is linked in the description and linked in the first comment, I'll teach you how to find properties below market value. More importantly, I'll teach you how to add value to those properties, creating you more equity super fast. And then we'll teach you how to cash flow those properties. And that could be serviced accommodation, HMO, student accommodation. Lots of different strategies we'll teach you in there. There's 100 videos. It's £20 one-time fee. You get all of that for an absolute crazy price. More than 2,000 people over the last few years have got it. So click below and grab that. Do smash like, do subscribe, do check out as well all the other content as well on the channel, including this video right here.